And so it has been long used as a garage, and it was previously back in the 1840s used as a petroleum storage facility. And so there are a lot of environmental issues associated with the property. The property is obviously not currently used as a permitted use in this zone. It's currently a C2A zone, but a garage repair facility is not deemed to be appropriate at that location. That is actually a use that is permitted in a much higher density zone. There's obviously a lot of cars. It was used as a garage facility up to just 4 months ago. There were 18 oil storage tanks located at the property over the life of the property. A majority of those, except for 5 had been removed. 5 had actually been closed on the site. There had been EPA letters and contamination letters. The property has obviously been dealt with years ago in regards to its environmental conditions, unless the property obviously was excavated or soil was then disrupted in the course of renovating it or bringing it back to a residential use. So that's one of the challenges here that we have with this property. Obviously, there are an extensive amount of environmental remediation that's required at the site, but obviously the development team is willing to undertake that challenge and willing to undertake that property to move forward and to provide a great asset and a great project. We have modified the project significantly since our initial application, and I will let Jeff walk through and kind of identify those areas. We've reduced the number of units, we've addressed the parking, we've addressed a lot of the design issues, and addressed those issues that the community has brought to our attention. We are seeking BZA relief for FAR and height. The height that we're seeking is 3.5 feet. So the matter of right height is already at 50 feet. So when you're looking at the project, you have to understand that the matter of right is at 50 feet, and we're only asking for 3.5 feet. So that's in regards to the degree of relief in that area. And we're asking for rear yard relief due to the property line, the fact that we're pushing the property back to be more in line with the existing row homes. But we have, as I said, worked with the ANC and the SMD. Some of the individuals in this room may have been at some of those prior meetings. We've also been working with some of the adjacent property owners. We did, just if there's a question that comes up, we had previously postponed our case from the BZA to try to provide more opportunities to meet with the SMD and the SMD coordinated meetings. We had a hearing today because if we did meet with the BZA today, we would have then been pushed off until further out. As the ANC knows, the BZA does not meet in August, so their calendar is getting very full. But we've asked them to leave the record open for the ANC's vote because we knew the ANC obviously must weigh in on this issue. And from the meetings, we were very hopeful that obviously the community was supportive at our last meeting on Thursday that Commissioner Buggs coordinated. So with that being said, I'll turn the project over to Jeff, and Jeff can walk through the details.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Knights from BTN Architects. As Meredith said, when we started the project, we started off looking at it kind of as a contemporary, lack of a better word, monolithic kind of approach. And this was the original design. It's a contemporary design. There's kind of a mixed take on the block. There's not a set style on the block. So we kind of went in with the approach to do something a little more contemporary. We met with the community who wasn't well received. So we went back to the drawing board and started looking at an alternative option. And I think at the first meeting, there was lots of conversations about Victorian style and looking at a Victorian design. So, but I did want to show you this. This was the original design. This would be the second one. Okay, now this starts to kind of incorporate some of the Victorian ideas, but it has a contemporary take on Victorian. Kind of start seeing some step backs here along the side, which kind of diminish it in scale to the residential row homes. You start seeing some long Victorian windows here, the multiple bays here. We did have some strong cornice lines here. Now in this design, we were doing this with a modern take on Victorian ideas. And I think we presented this with the community as well. They asked us to kind of keep exploring and kind of look at, I guess, deeper into the traditional Victorian. So up here, which I think is pretty good take on Victorian architecture. There's still a little bit of the language of kind of the more modern look of the building, but a lot of Victorian details. We have a very strong base here, and I've actually got some photos I'll show you of the materials that we're choosing there. It'll be a larger stone base, and it'll alternate between a rusticated stone and a flat stone. It has a limestone look to it, but it's actually a natural stone. You'll see a strong line here, which separates the first floor. I think through the community meetings, this was an all residential building. Initially, we had 52 units. We're down to 46. We're actually going to have some neighborhood serving retail here. It's a small retail bay, about 1,500, 2,000. It's up to 2,000. 2,000 square feet retail bay there on the street. So that kind of changed the look of the base too. So we wanted to give it that formal base. You'll see the strong cornice line here. You'll also see here. We're actually doing that with brick. So this will be brick corbel as opposed to more modern material that we saw before, which was steel. And you kind of see the brick corbels here that we have. We have precast bands here. We have a brick inlay here. It's around this. So we really took a lot of time to focus on the materials and how this building was going to look. Pretty high quality materials. And also, I think this setback was very important here to kind of give it that Victorian look. Brought kind of a picture of a couple of buildings that are under construction. This is kind of the base look. We did this project over at 1250 9th Street. It's 74 units, but you can kind of see that look of the base that we wanted for the building. It's a natural stone, and we'll get that alternating. This is the Maryland Avenue. We're going to have a project where the architects is. If you know 14th in Maryland Avenue, but it actually, you kind of see some of this brick inlay and some of the details.
Is that the old church?
Yes,
okay.
Maryland 14th. But you can, if you go by, you'll see the brick corbel at the top that makes a strong cornice line. And in this one, so I wanted to kind of bring that to kind of so you can see a sense of, and this is kind of the window there.
So your firm is doing the Maryland Avenue?
As an architect.
As an architect.
As an
Yes.
architect.
Design it.
Yes. Yeah, we're not the developers. I would. So I'll kind of show you the floor plans now, how this project is working. So, as Meredith was saying, the street, even here, most of the districts in DC, I live in Southeast and 6B, so most of the streets have a building restriction line, which creates a nice datum line that the buildings are set to. This one doesn't. So you kind of have buildings that are pushing and pulling down the street here. So what we did here, I think initially we had the building pulled forward near the property line. A lot of developers want to take advantage of the additional bays. Most bays are projected in public space. The property line is basically a sidewalk, and there's no building restriction line. But we pushed the building back to align with these adjacent row houses to make it flush, as opposed to pulling it forward. There's a small 3-foot gap here where we couldn't set it back on both sides. This is the retail bay here. So this is a floor plan. There's 2 courtyards here for air and light for these units up above. The garage entrance is off the back. We have 27 spaces for 46 units with 1 retail bay here. Straightforward building, 5 stories. Yeah, here's kind of the typical floor. You can kind of see the layout. So when we push the building back, that's what created the rear yard relief, as opposed to pulling it forward. It's a minor relief back in the back. And to go to the 3 feet in height, the site is contaminated. So normally what we would propose to the client is to sink the building 2 feet, and we would get it to work. With contaminated sites, the deeper you go, extremely expensive it becomes quite a burden and a hardship when you start pushing down into contaminated soils. I know the site's going to be clean and environmentally safe, but it gets extremely cumbersome when you push the building down 2 feet in an environmental condition like that. So that's why we're asking for the 2 feet.
Are you working with the EPA to mitigate the brownfield?
There's a contamination plan, correction action plan is the proper terminology, and that's already gone through DDOE for review, and the owners worked with Apex, and it's been approved in regards to what would be required, and there's obviously a process to review that and ensure that that's addressed.
So you're gonna be removing the tanks that are there, right?
Yeah, there's 5 tanks that are there, those will be removed. So out of the 18 original tanks, 13 of them had been removed over the district property, 5 had been infilled at the site, the 5 will be removed that are currently there. And then all the soil will be.
Yeah, all the soil around the tanks will be, all that, any contaminated soil will be removed, and that is part of the corrective action plan.
How deep are the tanks?
We're gonna be digging up to 10 feet.
So they're 10 feet.
Well, some of them are probably about 7, 8, they're different sizes, but the bottom would be about 10.
There's a process too, and the building code that requires us to, the way we do the foundation, to make it safe for the residents as well.
So there won't be a basement.
No, there will not.
No.
There will be no residences in
No.
typically you'd have a cellar level with units that are slightly below grade. One of the problems is this site would not, environmental service agency, Apex, that they hire a third party, would recommend that you not do that. So typically you'd be able to put 9, 10 units on the lower level. Here, that's not going to be allowed or recommended. And so that is the reason why we're asking for the additional.
And so is it anything, when I said it's gonna be a cellar, any storage, anything, or it's just?
It's a parking, the park.
Just parking.
So
Non-residential.
we have 8 parking spaces in the rear of the property, and the other 7 in the property.
I understand the issue with the dirt and, not being able to have residents there, but for me, looking at the design, it's almost as if the project is twice the size of the current homes, which is very concerning to me. It's not my single member district, so I'm likely going to vote with that district wants, but I find it to be concerning. It throws.
Well, let me just address that. It has to do with zoning, and this portion of the square is zoned C2A. So, as a matter of right, the project could be built all the way out to the property line, which is 10 feet beyond all of these facades, which we've now pushed it back to be even with this facade. And it could be built up to 50 feet. So that's what could be done as a matter of right. Obviously, I think that from the original design plan, this has been much improved with the setbacks, trying to address an elevated, respectful kind of discussion between the two. But the question is just, this is what the zoning allows in order for C2A. The additional height is for 3 feet. I don't believe that the 3 feet is gonna really change in regards to the concern of the overall height that's permitted on the site. The 50 feet is permitted.
I understand the concept because I have many Cs in my community because I'm Ivy City. My concern, I know it's allowable, but at the same time, what does that block look like after that fact? We already have a pop-up issue in DC, so I'm very concerned about that personally. I understand what's allowable, and you're not going very much over what's allowable, but I still want to think about the current homes that are there.
I can address that. Based on the environmental cost.
We're gonna let the commissioners speak and then I'll recognize the
Because I
committee.
like this. So in comparison to the church and the apartment building at West Virginia Avenue and Floyd Avenue and the house behind it that has the pop-up height, have you compared those heights? Are we over the apartment building at West Virginia Avenue and Floyd Avenue? Are we over the steeple of the church?
I think the West Virginia Avenue is too far. The church over here is about 40 plus, to the top of the
steeple.
Yes, the church is on this side.
Right.
On the west side is about 40 plus.
With this steeple? And have you seen the property behind it that's not directly behind it, that the pop-up goes up another story?
No, I have not seen that.
That's up pretty high.
Yeah, but the issue here is the environmental cost is substantial, and there's no way you will be able to develop this property and clean up the site if you reduce to funding on this. So, and that is a big concern. And then the properties down the street are a little bit higher than this one, right? And it's towards the other end, towards the other corner, they are 3, 4 stories high.
Okay, I'm going to allow the commissioners to ask questions first, and I will certainly open it up to the community so that you can ask questions as well. Commissioner Sharkar.
So I share the same concern, but I guess what I wanted to know, like, what did the community have to say about the height? Like, what were their concerns in terms of you know, it being that much higher than the other residents that are located next to it.
Well, I think this is an evolution of a lot of those meetings. We invited people to our office, talk to us, have like a design charrette. I think one of the things, it's hard to see here, but in the setback here, this is a setback that kind of diminished that on the corners. Here, we kind of created more internally to the site. That was one aspect that kind of came out of that. The other one was really the idea of the Victorian facade as opposed to a more contemporary language. I think this is pretty high quality materials. I mean, you can kind of see here we're showing brick social courses above the windows, a lot of detail for a project. But I think the community has been very pleased with the evolution of this. I mean, we put kind of put a mark here where 50 feet would be. So I think that everyone was kind of understanding that from a matter of right standpoint, the project was developed as a matter of right. They wouldn't have as much input, but it kind of opened the door and it gave them the ability to influence the design, which is a good thing from the community.
We had conversations with Emily, who lives in this house right here, and if she has indicated orally to the owner that she's supportive of the project. And we've had conversations with owners that are that own these two homes as well, and they've also indicated that they were initially concerned. I mean, there was initial concern at the first couple of meetings. I said we've been to multiple SMD meetings. There was concern just how the design has evolved and addressing those concerns. At the last meeting on Thursday, there were I don't know if I recommend going to that meeting on Thursday, but there were people present, and maybe Commissioner Buggs can address their comments on what they said and you know how we evolved and where it's going.
Commissioner Boggs?
Madam Chair, as Marcus has explained, I have had 3 S&D meetings with this project.
Okay.
On the first meeting, they were very, very disappointed with this project. To say the second meeting, they were also in an uproar, but they started coming around. I scheduled a 3rd meeting, this is past Thursday, and I got a group of people, but not as many as the first 2 meetings. Since that meeting on Thursday, I have received phone calls from constituents that stated that they didn't get notification and they would have liked to weigh in on this project. I must take some blame for that because I did get to know Tyler a little late. So I was talking to them earlier before the meeting to let them know that they are asking to be heard.
And that's good to know. I have some concerns. On the one hand, the fact that we had a non-conforming use, which was that auto repair there before, which you know is totally against the comprehensive plan, and that's one of the main problems that we're struggling with in the 5E community along Lakesburg Road. It's just, you know, people have dumped these industrial uses on us, and it's like it doesn't matter. So I'm torn about that, and I'm certainly happy that we have a residential project before us, but like Commissioner Lewis and Commissioner Shropshire, I'm really concerned. This is a massive project, and it really, you know, on the face, it includes light and air. I want to hear what the neighbors behind, you're asking for an additional 10 feet in the rear of the project. I want to hear what those neighbors have to say. And I also want you to address additional efforts that you could take to ameliorate that brownfield, that storage tank contamination that would allow you to use the basement, because building atop a project where you're being told that you can't put any residents down there because there's some lingering toxicity, that's a big problem.
I can address that. That would be completely the project, the site would be absolutely clean. We don't want to take any risk, and it's just not recommended. They're not saying completely excluded, you can't use it. It's just that it just would be prudent not to have residential use in the site. That's why we put in, basically we're losing before going that potential area, space that we can use. We don't want to put any residential units there. So there's going to be parking, but it will be absolutely clean. It will be supervised and inspected by the DOE. There is a, like Meredith said, the corrective action plan has already been approved to clean it, the site. All that storage, all those that is contaminated, all the tanks will be removed at a substantial cost. And that's the reason that we're asking that we might have the 53 feet high in order to recoup some of that cost.
What has the response been from the neighbors in the rear? Because this project is really, if you look along Florida Avenue now, there used to be a sliver of land that is now an apartment building there. And now it's dimmer along Florida Avenue because the light and air have been significantly reduced. And certainly, we look forward to development, but we're giving up our light and air with all this extra density.
I think the properties on the rear, I think I can kind of show you here on the site plan. The aerial show, these are garages. The back of their houses is over 160 feet. So there'll actually be no 140 to 160 feet. Somewhere around there, but the building is 53 feet. So a typical shadow is 1/2 the height on the forest condition. So I mean, the shadow would barely be in their backyard from an air and light issue. So that's a substantial distance to the back of those houses. There would be no adverse effect on shadow or air and light on this property.
Commissioner Buds, then we're going to move on to you, sir. Commissioner Roberts, then you, sir, then Commissioner Dumas.
Madam Chair, it is the residents that on the back of this project that's speaking about this project. They were not at the meeting. There was only one person last Thursday that was at the meeting.
Well, when is the BZA hearing?
It is today.
It was today.
Oh, it's today. Oh, it's today. Okay.
We requested, as I said, we've already asked for one postponement to have more SMD meetings. We informed the board that we were coming this evening, and on Thursday, we informed the community that we were going to be coming this evening and still going to BCA, and we asked them to BCA to keep the record open to make sure that they have an opportunity. So we informed the BCA of the fact that we were coming this
So the record's still open
Yes.
for your hearing today?
Yes, for the ANC. So we're very clear with them and very
Commissioner Roberts, then you, sir.
To that point, so when does the record close?
The chair said that the meeting was today, which is not my call, I want to be clear. He indicated that he'd like the ANC to file something on Friday.
Okay. So then the real...
ANC.
Okay, so they're going to close the record on Friday, whether or not this commission does something.
They are hoping that tonight the ANC will vote and provide a resolution that can be considered.
Okay, so the real question I wanted to ask is, so basically what you're asking for our support for, I'm ignoring the 0.5 relief on the far for a second, but basically you're asking for relief for an additional roughly 3.5 feet of height, right? And then 10 feet back towards the alley.
So what it is this rear yard is an interesting concept. You don't